you very much.
I think it's been, 30 something days, 6 weeks of lockdown, and the bubble is about to be broken for some people that are already at work, and other people, well, a lot of us still are at home. We're ready to go to level 2, and during our lives at the moment, we've had the merge of work, life, family in our bubble, and we would normally have boundaries and a clear demarcation of these different pots in your life, and they've been very blurred. And now that the bubble's been broken, do you think business leaders, entrepreneurs are going to be able to cope with the post-lockdown attitude people might have about how they want to work, or what they've gone through with their boundaries being blurred? And how can a leader really help people transition back to what most people want is normal life? But will that really happen?
There's a lot in that. There are quite a few questions in there. Will businesses be able to cope? I'm not totally convinced that a lot of businesses realise how different things are going to be in terms of the mental state of people. And I don't mean in terms of mental health, I do mean in terms of attitude. Because people will be coming out of their bubble with all sorts of different reactions. Some people will be really keen to get back to work and to reconnect. Some people will have had a great experience of being home and think, well, why can't I do this more often? Yeah. Some people will be saying, well, I quite like a bit of home life, but I also need a break as well. How do I do that? And I think there's going to be quite a lot of uncertainty for people, because they're going to be saying, I've experienced a different way of being and it's told me something about myself, but how do I have this conversation with my manager? How do I have an honest conversation that goes, this is honestly how I feel about the type of work expectations that I used to have and my experiences of what I've had over the last month, good or bad or mixed?
Yeah, and so do you think, you see, going back to what you're saying, you're not convinced businesses have actually realised that there's going to be a possible different type of mental attitude? Is that just because obviously they're not having conversations, or that there's not enough conversations being had around this? Or why do you think they're poorly, what's the word, prepared possibly?
Because to go back to the quote, normal way of working is what our hardwired brains are used to. So a lot of businesses are going, how do we get back to business as usual?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people are going, I don't want to get back to business as usual. I now want to think about, well, what's important for me? I've had more exposure to my family, and for some people, it's been fantastic that I've been at home when they've been sick and I've been able to support them. Now, I don't feel able to have a conversation with my manager about how can we keep this going? Because from my point of view as an employee, I'll probably think, well, the likelihood is they'll probably say no, because we're getting back to having to be in the office the whole time.
So are business leaders, or anyone's running their business, asking the wrong question?
I think they're focused on the wrong agenda. And what they're probably focused on is, how do we get our systems and our tasks back to normal?
Right.
Rather than how do we support our staff to be the best that they can be in the jobs that they do.
Okay, I'm trying
that involves having a very different conversation.
That's really good. So rather than focusing on the systems and the tasks back to normal, really the agenda should be is, how do we focus on our people to be working at the best that they can be. Yeah.
And that may involve organisational effort. And it may involve looking at the work profile and how people do things in a different way. So that's not easy for business. But having said that, if you want your team to be as productive as possible, if you want your individuals to be performing at their best, this is just such a major opportunity to reappraise, is the way that we work the best way for creating mental and physical health, so people perform at their best, so they love their job, they are passionate about their job, and they end up performing better.
Right. So really, if you see this, not just as how we, if we reposition it in your mind, not about systems and processes and make normal, but what is the opportunity that we can take from this about how people perform best, and ask, and like you say, get the organisation to come together and put real effort into investigating how people are feeling and what the opportunity might present itself if you put people first, then actually the systems and processes will that you going back to normal may not be that, but they will be efficient. Therefore, your organisational will be more efficient and returning to possibly what it was.
Yes, I mean, I'm talking to quite a lot of people who are, I mean, I don't like the term, but they label themselves as introverts. And they're going, actually working from home and not having to have all these meetings and these connections with people, I feel very safe, and I actually I'm a lot more productive. And on the other end of the spectrum, I'm also supervising one person at the moment, and he's just admitted, I am hopeless at self-management. I just cannot set up my own structure. I need an externally imposed structure. That's what works best for me. But if you impose a simple policy and go, well, even let's say, well, some people work at home twice a week and then they're in the office for the rest of the time. Well, that will work for some people, but not for everybody. So it's more about, for that person who needs structure, well, what's going to work best for him? For that person who really works well on their own and just needs to check in occasionally, what's going to work for them? And my observation is that from a leadership point of view and an organisational point of view, in the past, if we're honest, we probably haven't trusted our staff enough. Will they get the job done? And in a sense, we need to give people that opportunity to either prove or disprove their idea of what works best for them, rather than impose an idea of what we think will work best for the organisation. Yeah.
And that's probably because, which goes back to, how a lot of people's boundaries were broken, and demarcation of work life, and that has all blurred. And what really is driving that behaviour originally was, like you say, is there was probably not enough trust in the beginning, pre-COVID-19, in people, and they were, working at hours that weren't probably, were extended beyond what they normally have done. Or I've had a lot of my clients say they're working longer hours, are stuck in Zoom meetings a lot more because there's a lot of communal decision making. And I've been wondering in the back of my mind whether, because under this environment you need more people in authority need to get more visibility in a lot of the decisions that have been made. But I've been wondering where part of it is it's a way of checking in on people and on productivity. So Anton, this thing of trust is really, I've noticed that if you didn't have trust or strong organisational trust or psychological safety or a culture of psychological safety pre-COVID-19, some of that has trickled down into the way working from home. And I've had conversations with clients who've felt like they're busier now, and they have been having lots of Zoom calls and more connecting, and it's under the veil of checking in, but they feel that possibly it's my boss just wants to see if I'm working.
Yeah.
Is this kind of what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, there's a whole variety of how leaders are managing this, but there are quite a lot of people who they themselves are going, well, how as a leader do I balance showing care for my employees with responsibility and accountability and self-efficacy? How much do I stand back? How much do I check in? And it's difficult to know. And for some people, they absolutely do not need that checking in. They will do the work. In fact, for some, the risk is doing too much work and not getting those boundaries right for them. However, at the other side, there will be some people who find it very, very difficult to self-manage. And that lack of trust, if you like, or the need for supportive structure is going to be more important for those individuals. But yes, for a lot of people, it's like, I don't know what they're doing, and I'm not used as a leader, I'm not used to knowing how to manage my team without being there to monitor them, if you like.
And it's funny, and what you just said has made me also think about other comments where I've had a lot of conversations about people and their boss. And, normally I don't think those conversations come up because at work environment, you've got a project or a distraction and you don't really have time to reflect on it. But because we're operating in a psychological pandemic or a crisis, you are constantly looking at your boss's leadership style. Mm-hmm. And there has been, I think, a lot of reflection around the type of leadership people have been surrounded by and whether it suits them or not as well. And so if there has been that trust, or hasn't been a culture of trust before, kind of hasn't been an issue before, but now it seems to be more of an issue. Would you agree?
Absolutely, because if you think about how a team works, if you've got a lot of support from your peers and you feel as though you can have that conversation around the kitchen or whatever, that peer support sort of counteracts it, if you like. So it dilutes that sense and you can almost step away from it. And when you step away from work and everything else, you then go back to home and you've got that sort of delineation. So, but now the person that you will be talking to most probably, and maybe even more than you might do normally, is that manager. So any tensions or rifts or conflicts that were there or lack of trust that were there to begin with are more likely to be expressed. So yeah, absolutely. It does make sense as to why that would happen. The other thing I also think, which is important, is that because this has forced people to think about their role and their position and their work and their life in a different way, they're starting to think. I'm seeing some people going, well, actually, does this really suit me? Does this way of working, is it good for me? I've never really thought about that before. I just go to work and I do my job and I either accept it or I don't. But there's a lot more people going, actually, I'm important here too. I do have a voice, and I'm now starting to go, oh, there are different ways of working and thinking and being. So it's making me question a lot of things.
Which is a lovely loop around to the whole point of this episode, was that we had demarcations, clear demarcations. We're almost in a robotic state. This is what we do, and this is the company that I'm in. Right, like you said, if you did have problems with your boss, you could go to another colleague or peer support, and then it would sort of just roll under the carpet, and it wasn't, and you just dealt with it and just put it in a box and moved into your life box, or you moved into your family box, your personal box. But because it's all blurred and there's been a lot of reflection, the workforce that's returning out of the bubble is really, really important as to what, and leaders have to understand that's what they have to work on and actually help that transition into the return from the bubbles.
And again, the evidence from internationally, from America, Australia and the UK, is that when as a leader you really tailor how you are and who you are and set up the culture that is responsive to everybody's different thinking styles and ways of being and ways of working, that's when performance increases. It initially does take more effort.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit of skill in knowing what sort of questions to ask and how to ask them and how to create that psychological safety. But once you've got those in place, performance really goes up. And there are some classic examples where when you trust people more, when you give them more flexibility and autonomy, there's a place that in Norway, for example, they did the 4-day working week and performance went up, not down. Because people felt they were more accountable, they felt as though they were being more trusted, they felt as though they were being given something that was valuable for them. It didn't work for everybody, but it worked for a lot of people. So when we start to take that step back and we tailor our approaches to really what works for people, that's when we get the best out of the talent. That's when we can make the most of the talent that we already have in our organisation.
That is fantastic. And I think I'm talking to Natasha Tucker next, who's organisation lead and development coach, and I think get her advice on how we can help leaders turn this into an opportunity and really see the value of setting up a psychological safe culture so people can bring their best selves.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Once again, you've been amazing, and
It's always a pleasure.
You've brought so much insight into what's actually happening in our brains, and then being able to, what I love about what we're doing at Kids Keep It Together is actually help leaders build plans to bring back into the workforce healthy, like mentally healthy teams, and so they can perform at their very best, and then businesses can get the very best as well.
Absolutely, and it is a major opportunity to make that happen in a way that perhaps we haven't paid enough attention to in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Let's pay more attention.
Yes, exactly.
I'm looking forward to our next episode, and it's again a pleasure to have you again.
Thanks a lot, Lena.
Talk soon.
Bye. Bye.
Welcome back, Natasha Tucker. Good to see you again.
Thank you. You too.
Now, Natasha is on our panel, and she is an organisation learning and development coach.
Yep.
We have been tackling in this episode, we will be tackling in this episode, Natasha, breaking the bubble. And what this actually means is our home work life has come into one, the demarcations that we've had in the past gone, the boundaries we've got blurred, and now people are going back to the workforce with probably an altered mental attitude at work for work. Some might be going, yay, let's go back to the way it was, and others might be sitting there going, you know what, I've seen or had an experience, as Anton was saying earlier, I quite like, or I've gone through a completely different experience, and I'm a different person now out of it. And I think a lot of organisations, and what Anton was saying was, they probably aren't ready or haven't clearly realised that there is going to be this shift.
Yeah.
And leaders are more likely going to be focused around systems and processes. And you coined the other day, you said, we're so concerned about our economic recovery, we also need to think about our people recovery, and if we have well people, we will have good performance. I'd love to know your thought about, we've broken the bubble, and as a leader, if we do have a lot of people coming back who have this new experience, may want to do things differently, and you may be a leader who just wants to get on with the way things were. What do you do about the situation? How could you see the situation? What does the organisation have to consider to do differently to be able to get their business running the way it was, or performing, out of the COVID-19 crisis that they've gone through?
The world we've been living in for the last while. It's a good question, because, the systems and the processes are important. There was a big focus when we went out of organisations of how will we function, how will we get ourselves up and running. And so it makes sense that will be the initial focus, because they'll tend to think of the technology and the space and how we move people, hopefully not like widgets, but sometimes they do. But it's looking at the different quadrants, so you have got the systems with, so have we got IT working? Have we got people back in there answering phones? Are we functioning with our systems and processes? And you've got the people who will want the data to know what's working and what do we need to do. But you've also got the real people side of it. You've got who are the people who like to do things, and how are they feeling after the way they've done it lately? And you've got the people who are very people focused. So really thinking of all those quadrants of running a business where we tend to focus on definitely the structures and the processes. It's thinking of all the other elements, but also going right back to the start around, well, who are these people and how are they feeling? You know, we've had to work from home for this set period of time. Some people have got families. They've been working in their bedroom or the lounge or the dining room. They've been trying to school their kids. Some people don't have jobs, or their partner might have lost a job. And we're all waiting to hear what's next. So when it is, you know, when we do move back to business as normal, you know, lots of people have been saying there is no normal now. What is it? The way of work has changed going forward. And it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? So again, I do think it comes down to, yes, the systems and processes to get people to get things functioning for the business, but what is it our people are feeling right now? How you know, they might say that they're fine, but, you know, it's easy enough to say I'm fine, but if we get below the surface, there's a whole lot of elements in these four walls that we're living in right now, which are compounding and having an impact on the way we feel. So I do think it comes back to a couple of things. It's, you know, there's so much value in an external business doing a feedback survey anonymously, so that, like Divergent Thinking, where you can then find out how people are feeling, what their preferences. Would they rather be at home initially? Because if you're going to split work for your teams, your business, and have some at home and some at work, who prefers to be where? So rather than telling them and controlling it and managing it as such, ask them what they want. And I mean, we do that with 14 questions. It's like a 5-minute survey, but that gives you feedback, and it also lets you know how stressed they're feeling. Because one organisation that we did it with, they're a tech firm. You know, they're very they pivot very quickly based on needs. But when they did do the survey, they were quite surprised at the level of stress people were feeling. And I think because there's normal work stress of previous work life, but at the moment it's quite different. It's quite compounded because, you know, lockdown, we're locked up. So it's finding out what people want, as well as being very conscious around creating psychological safety so that people do feel they can be honest, you know, and that could be, you know, are my leaders skilled in these things to create psychological safety, or are they very task focused, or are they very structural focused? Are they comfortable having people conversations? Do people feel they can be honest, because who knows where their business is at? So I think it's an opportunity for senior leaders to be looking at what is it our leaders need and what is it our people need, and do our leaders right now have the skill to be to create, to build those true relationships, not just a hi, how are you okay, yes, good, thank you, okay, how are you doing on your tasks, yep, I'm up to date, okay, speak to you next week. That's quite superficial. It's actually, you know, what's going on at home, how are you coping, you know, how are the kids responding, you know, actually. And I think a key point that we've talked to some people about is the leaders don't need to be counsellors or psychologists, but they need to be able to hear if there's something more, and then have within the organisation, the organisation needs to put some effort into looking at, if people aren't okay, what have we got in place? And not just EAP or bottom of the cliff stuff, but what could we be doing, thinking about our people. And that's, again, the survey is great, because how are they feeling? What do they need? Finding out from them so that people don't end up in a bad headspace. They don't end up losing it because it's all just too much. You know, actually proactively getting out there and learning how they're really feeling, which, you know, I've not worked with an organisation where they actually have that level of knowledge and listen and utilise, because it becomes a collaborative process when you get the feedback.
And I'm just going to, something you said that I thought was really interesting, and I'm just going to pick it up, because if the cynic in me, so as you know, I, like, you know, many businesses I've, you know, pre-COVID-19, humming, flying, and then very heavy, hard fall, you know, as a result of COVID-19.
Yep.
Instant okay, is just to get back running, get the wheels back on, which is systems, processes, right?
Yep.
Then why, so what, like you say, a lot of people aren't in tune with where their people are at, right? And what's the opportunity for me, really? Why should I make this, and like you say, organisational effort to do that?
Yeah.
I think, it's kind of obvious sometimes the answer, but I think we should spell it out almost.
Totally. What's the with and what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because so many organisations are task or number, it's all counting, it's all visibility. What's going on underneath isn't important. So I think, if you stop and think about what is our purpose as a team or an organisation, and why are we doing this, and who do we need, and what do we need to do this, the people are a key component. And, a lot of companies were already working, staff working long hours and under pressure, trying to make it work. And then you add into this all the additional stress. The challenge is that people, it's like ducks. People might come back into work and everything looks fine. I'm dressed nicely, my hair's done, my makeup's done, I'm here. But is the shell, the body's here, but is the brain here? Because if there's stuff going on inside and they're still struggling with whatever's going on at home or how they're feeling, they're not in their flow, they're not in their best place to be doing the best they can. The interactions could be more rigid, the team meetings could be harder, they're just not going to be doing the best they can, also enabling you to do the best you can. And then, you can get friction and toxic atmospheres going on. So the sooner that we sort of stop and go, where are we at? And even doing that, a meeting, like welcome everyone back, morning tea or whatever, and then having group team sessions to go, where is everyone? Because if you've got that pre-work and you've got the information of how they're feeling, to get together with that pre-work around the psychological safety, and part of what we do with the brain, how the different ways the brain work, to understand how I am, who I am and how I function and other people, and creating space to realize what they're like, means then that I can, if we've got the safety with our leaders and within the team, we can be honest. And then we become this, there's such an opportunity from, it's awful what's happened. Who would have ever thought we'd be locked down for 6+ weeks? No, would never have picked it. So there's this opportunity from this, we've all been shooken up, and some people are gagging for connection. So how do we harness that? How do we take that opportunity and go, right, what do we want this to look like going forward? How do we interact? How do we bring 100% of ourselves to work? Or, is that realistic? Maybe 90%, but I would guess right now people are maybe bringing 40-50% of their true authentic self to work.
Yeah.
And so now there's an opportunity to look at how do we actually, because there's so much value in the other parts that make us a good mother, or in the community things I do, or the sports things I do with my kids or myself. How do we bring that natural ease to work, so that and have a voice with confidence, with care, so that we can all do great things together. There's going to be challenges, but then that's also around the leaders having the right skills to understand those challenges. Like, so where are their skills as leaders? What development do they need? One of the programs we run is managing different brains under stress. So it's understanding what what it looks like for different people under stress, how people will respond, because people don't go to work to piss you off. They don't want to not get on with you. It's things that usually happen. Sometimes it's a straw that breaks the camel's back, and then it goes like, boom, and you're like, where did that come from? So having opportunities.
And like you say, it's seeing it as an opportunity rather than having this, what we would classify as someone resistant in the workplace, difficult to work with. Actually, they're a person that's under stress. And if you see it as an opportunity right from the beginning, call it out and just say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's understand how we can bring our best selves. That's actually the best way to accelerate your performance out of COVID-19, isn't it? It's not the long way. It's actually a shortcut to acceleration, isn't it?
It's a way to bring us all back together quickly, hear where we are, and mesh back in. I think what comes to mind when you were talking then as well is, I think from a senior leadership perspective, there needs to be some different, Kate, like as a transition, because it's a transition period. And like we talked about last time, you know, it's going to take 12 to 24 months for the economy. How do we look at what measures we need to have in place around wellness? What check-ins people should be doing so that we actually truly have some measures of what are the things that are improving, and I think also what are the things that are decreasing, because, you know, if stress is something that if you have the external feedback done and you can measure it again down the track, your EAP services, they're great for individuals, but the reason we've set up our business is individuals do coaching and EAP and they grow and become more resilient as an individual, but what they usually realize is they can't change what's around them in the business and they leave. So how do we, by being proactive and working with teams to be psychological safety, understand that our brains are different, our responses are different, and it's not me, it's my brain, and when I know what it is, then I can work with it, but having measures, because people respond, what is measured is what people will do. So to have some things with a starting point measure and then reviewing it 3, 6, 12 months down 2 years, and ideally the money I've spoken to organisations who before this had nearly doubled their EAP costs, and I believe with the programs we're running it will become cash neutral. You will actually see an increase in the wellness because you're at the top of the cliff and you're very seldom needing to bring in the ambulance as the goal. And there's some great companies looking at that right now, which is really exciting that we're talking to.
So if you want to grow your business out of COVID-19 incredibly fast, maybe just for a second, put down the tools and the systems. They're great, obviously. Go back to them when you have to. But the most important thing you can focus right now, and the biggest opportunity for you to grow your business, is your people, is what you're saying. The wellness of your people.
I think it's a balanced approach. I think it's all of it. But I think it's looking at all of it together. It's not just looking at the systems and not looking at the people. It's assessing. I'm quite into it. It's all parts of it together. So yes, your systems and processes, absolutely, we need that to function. But also we need to look at our people and how they're feeling and how they're coping with the systems, how they're coping with the environment, so that we have a clear understanding of the whole lot. And there are tools to enable you to do that. What people don't realise is they often see the finance numbers, and that's very easy to see. And sometimes it's misleading because, you know, that could be fine, but the people aren't. And how long is that going to keep going that way? But if you're looking at both with tools that we've got or other people have got, then you can check that both are moving in the right direction and you're getting the right outcomes. And, you know, talking numbers to the numbers people will always help you. So if your EAP costs are going down and your sickness is going down and your retention is improving and your people aren't leaving, then those are costs that you can go into your wellness programs, which your finance people will hopefully love.
Well, again, enlightening, Natasha Tucker. I have to say, I always go in there, running a business myself, trying to shortcut, do a workaround so I can just get to the growth. But it's nice to actually just pause. It's a balanced approach. You need both, but I need to see it as an opportunity as well, in terms of how you can get teams back and actually go, what is the best way for you to work so you can be your best self? Very simple question. And like you say, there's actually, I love what you guys do, and you just have a survey, 14 questions, definitely third party, because nobody ever wants to get that feedback directly, and you want people to be honest. So what I might just do is when I edit, I'm going to edit the show together, and at the end I will have a little link to you guys so people can ask you about your survey. What do you call it?
It's our mental health and wellbeing employee feedback survey.
Okay, so I'll put that down if you want to know a little bit about that, and people can come and connect with you on that.
Brilliant. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll see you for the next episode.
Wonderful. See you then.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome, Jerry Beale, my favourite culture coach, who has got a lot of hair as a result of being in lockdown for so long. Oh.
I'm not liking the hairiness. There you go.
Here you go. Jerry today is going to help me with episode 5, which is the bubble has been broken. With, the demarcations from work, home, life, and family have all been blurred, and people and the way we've been working traditionally has been changed while we've been working from home, and we want to really figure out, are businesses ready to adapt to the demands of post-lockdown work attitude? And, there are some businesses who will want to just hit the ground running. How do you feel about that as a culture coach?
I think any business that thinks they can simply summon the team back into the factory or the office and go, all right, chaps, carry on as before, is absolutely dreaming. In a psychological sense, the last 5-6 weeks, and even the build-up before that, where, we had the bushfires in Australia, we've had the escalation of the climate crisis, and then COVID-19. Everybody has been feeling an existential angst. And now, after 6 weeks of lockdown, the phrase I heard in a research seminar yesterday was that we're in a heightened emotional state. We're raw and we're vulnerable. All our social norms have been dissolved. The familiar landmarks and boundaries, the moments that characterize our days have all shifted. And that means that our boundaries, as you say, have been shattered, actually. Trust will have dissolved in some areas of our life. And when boundaries are torn out, most of us then set our own boundaries. So if we're not guided to have fresh boundaries, we set our own boundaries. But at the same time as being emotionally raw and vulnerable, we're struggling with just this complete avalanche of information overload. There's the daily infection statistics from around the world and locally here. There is the meaning of level 3, level 2 lockdown. There's all the conspiracy theories. There's how to work from home, how to Zoom. There's so much being thrown at us, and we can't keep our heads above water. So that's adding to the degree of distress and disorientation. And then now as we move from level 3 to level 2, again, in whatever format, whether we can continue to work from home at least some of the time, whether we all have to go back into the workplace, that is yet another disruption. We had the lockdown. We went through the cycle, if you like, of the initial shock and the trauma at that, the anger, the grief, the resistance. And I suspect some of us are still actually grieving. But we made things work. We found that equilibrium of some sort in level 4 lockdown, and we carried it to the level 3, but now we've got to change again, and we're hearing that some people actually enjoyed lockdown. Perhaps for the introverts like myself, it was a chance to explore myself some more. There are some people who are nervous about emerging, whether it's directly because of what they see as a risk of the virus resurging or some other reason. But we cannot assume that every single individual is on the same page about coming back to work. It's just not going to happen. So my belief is that any organization, whether it's a school, whether it's a business, needs to design a re-entry program. And in the same way as when an astronaut comes back to Earth after 3 months in space, or we know that when people from New Zealand or Australia go down to Scott Base for a winter, when they come back to, if you like, civilization, they're actually given a reintegration program, which allows them to adjust physically and psychologically from one environment to the other. And that is exactly where we are now. And of course, our businesses need to get back, if you like, to doing what they do well within whatever constraints and opportunities we currently operate in. Of course, we need to get back on the tools. But what we're hearing from Australia, from the doctors and psychologists there is the opportunity or the possibility, of a re-entry syndrome where people are physically dragged back to work, but their minds and their spirits just aren't ready. And if they're told, let's get back on as you were, work, there is a very real danger of meltdowns, of conflagrations, emotional distress, withdrawal, and resistance. The business won't be able to rely on the same degree of communication and cooperation because we're all in a different place, And
so what you're saying is like finding this equilibrium. I love the analogy you used for space because I think in our previous episode we talked about bursting the bubble, and it felt like a re-entry from space. And look, if astronauts have come from space, a different universe, right, to Earth, and you need to have a re-entry program, what you're saying is we need a re-entry plan. We can't just turn up on day one. We spoke earlier, offline about, how some schools were doing it. And it was clear that some organisations and schools have a plan. And that, I think you need to have a plan and you need to articulate the plan, right?
Absolutely. It would be an extraordinarily unwise decision to just assume we can drop back in and carry on where we were 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And in fact, again, to credit TRA Research, they summed up the mood of the nation currently is winning while we're losing. So, within this heightened emotional vulnerability and this information overload, we think we're winning, if you like, against the virus in New Zealand. But at the same time, there's this huge shadow around, well, what will the economy do? What will a downturn look like? What will it mean for me, my mortgage, my family, my jobs?
Yeah.
And which again creates an ambiguity of presence. I don't actually know who I am, where I am, how I am. I just know I don't feel centered. I don't feel like I'm in a place that is nurturing and nourishing for me.
Yeah.
And to go back to one of our first episodes, that is why it is absolutely crucial that as a business creates this reintegration plan, they build it upon the 4 pillars of rhythm. What are the routines and rhythms that we now move to work as a team? Where and there does each individual know their responsibilities and also where their support lies? And I'm hearing some of my clients have changed their structure in lockdown to actually give, if you like, managers smaller groups to caretake. So, somebody will have a team of 4 or 5, and their role is actually just to take care of those people and to be there in a communication sense. So reestablish the rhythm. Yeah. Work to build trust. And again, we must maintain the psychological safety that is so important if we're going to get the best out of our team. Yeah. Where am I feeling unsafe? Where am I feeling safe? What constitutes safety for me? Yeah. Connection, amplify the connections, get people talking, get people sharing and collaborating. Even if a task can be done by one person, just right now, I get it done by 3. Get the team working together. If you're back in the office, get them working together in a safe situation, but face to face. So once again, we re-experience what it's like to sit in the same space and not see somebody through a tiny computer screen. Right. Let's relearn the nuances of body language. Let's reappreciate the value of eye contact and what that means with, the mirror neurons. If I'm seeing kindness, I'll return kindness. Yeah. If I'm seeing antagonism and expectation, I'm going to reply and shrink or respond aggressively. Yeah. And then the fourth pillar, communication. Again, over communicate again and again and again. So the pillars again that we use to traverse each stage: rhythm, trust, connection, and communication.
Yeah.
And they will look different, or they will, from level 4 to 3 to 2, things will change across those pillars. But what the team needs is continuity of purpose, continuity of trust and relationships, and continuity of rhythm.
Yeah.
And if we do that right, we'll get there. Sorry.
No, I know. I love that. So if you've got a re-entry plan, well, if you don't have a re-entry plan, first acknowledge that you need one.
I mean, you build your own, bring up somebody like me, and we can help you build one right now.
Yeah.
One of the key stages in that is actually finding out how the team are. If you sit surrounded by a team of 15, perhaps you can gauge just by being with them where they're at. But if you've got a workforce of over 50 people, I strongly urge you to look at a quick survey. And there's a couple already out there. Yeah, businesses that have already built surveys, which means we can send out an online questionnaire to our team in the morning, get the answers back by lunchtime because they're quite short. Yeah. Excuse me. And the analysis then tells us, where are people at? Where are the pockets of confidence? Where are the pockets of distress? Yeah. Then we can design our plan according to that.
Yeah. And you might have themes like, one, might be our ambition is to regroup, reconnect, or reinforce. And we might be doing that through, like you say, the pillars of reestablishing your rhythm and rhythms and routines. You said, working to build trust, pillar number 2. And that might be through the caretakers, assigned caretakers. Number 3 is, really amplify your connections. And I really like this, like relearning the nuances of the body language, teamwork in a safe setting, but just do what you can to relearn the connections. And number 4 is obviously over communicating. And that sits under that communication pillar is the continuity of your purpose and building those trust and relationships.
Yeah, and again, as somebody who is managing organization, and people like Simon Sinek talk at length about, to lead is not to extract productivity. To lead actually is to grow others and allow them to grow so they in turn lead the productivity. Leadership is most of all creating the circumstances for others to develop themselves. And I think at this point, there are three big things to build into the plan. The first one is empathy. Compassionate empathy means, whilst I can't feel what you're feeling, I understand how you're feeling and why you're feeling that. And the second part of compassionate empathy is to act. So once I understand where you're at, I will take the action required to help you, to put you at your ease, to help you feel safe. Mm. The second big thing is expectations. No matter what your expectations are, if I'm not in the right place, it's not going to work. So again, we're talking to our clients about the need. Obviously, we've got to get back to business, got to get some cash flow and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But in these first, if you like, these toddler steps, we've all got trainer wheels on through this pandemic. It's been new to all of us. We have to relax the expectations to what's realistic. And the third word is pace. We've got to go at the pace of our people. We can't go at the pace, if you like, of the directors or at the pace of the market or the pace of whatever. We have to go at the pace of our people. Mm. And if we do that, we will integrate. We will integrate where people are at into where they are willing participants, where we have alignment and collaboration. And very quickly, we have, I think, a sustainable model which keeps the business reforming and moving into whatever the world needs us to be.
You know, Jerry, I just feel that for a business, or, you know, business leaders, or anyone that's got a team that they look after, if they're going to build a perfect re-entry plan, I think they need to come and see you.
Well, some are, you know, I mean, this shouldn't be a sales pitch, but it doesn't have to be a bigger than better exercise. It's looking at the nature of the business as it is, looking at the vision you have for where it needs to get to.
Yeah.
And then how do we bring the human beings on that journey with kindness and compassion?
And I think that what people can take away from this as a bones of, or you know, the genesis of a plan. But there, like you say, it can be easily done. You know, this has been repeated with Natasha as well. You can do a survey, a third party, to understand where your people are. But you've then got to tailor a plan around your culture, your company culture, your identity, and also around what the needs are from your survey. So there's quite a bit of work to do, but I think if you can do anything, just acknowledge that you need a plan.
I mean, I think you can look at this either as a cost or an investment.
Yeah.
You know, I would say it's basically table stakes for getting back to work. We don't want to bring things back to the table now and have them fall apart in a month or so.
Yeah.
So let's reset the business with a view on the long term, on 6 months from now, on a year, 2 years from now. Because again, most markets are uncertain. But what will make a business able to respond to that is the resilience and the coherence of the team.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and we've built a simple set of 6 short workshops that we're delivering to leaders over Zoom around here are the basics of your reset and re-entry journey. And some of it is logistical, and some of it, if you like, is cognitive and cultural.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jerry. And I think if we'll have to, for anyone that is interested in the workshops, I think we'll put your details up in the episode as well, because that sounds like something that can be really, really useful for a lot of business leaders.
My pleasure. Alrighty.
Thank you so much, Jerry.